The second picture is what becomes known as the Judith Montefiore College, which was, if you look on the map, was right here. It was a crescent. It's called the cottage. It was built on this part of this land, not over by the estate. And it was built after Lady Judith had passed away. Sir Moses wanted to do something in her honor. So he built what they called the college, but it was a kollel. It was a traditional kind of a place of learning like you would have found in Jerusalem, like Sir Moses would have seen on his visits to Jerusalem, where the people who were in the college were not studying for accreditation to become rabbis. They were studying Torah for the sake of studying Torah. Now, that shouldn't sound like it was something simple. They were expected to study from 5 to 7 a.m., at which point there would be morning services. They would then study again from 9 to 1 o'clock. They would then study again from something like 2 to 6. They would have midnight service, so tikkun, that would happen, tikkun chatzot, and then expected to be back at 5 in the morning. The three individuals that first joined, it was the building he built had 10 homes in it, 5 on each side, and the middle area that you can see in this picture had both what they called the library, right, the Beit Midrash, and the upper floor would have been a lecture hall. And the initial people to do it were basically retired rabbis that he brought in from other places in Europe that wanted to be, everything they needed was taken care of for them. Their sole responsibility was to study Torah, and there would be like a weekly lecture that they were meant to give that Sir Moses would try to attend. And they would have, let's say, sometimes gatherings on specific anniversaries. So the anniversary of when Montefiore succeeded in overturning the blood libel in Damascus, they would always have a day of learning dedicated to that. And so there were kind of different days dedicated to the days on which Sir Moses had accomplished his feats of overturning calamities to Jewish communities. Because we know Sir Moses was quite active in this ambassadorial role of intervening when Jewish communities were at risk. Famously with the Damascus affair, the blood libel of 1840, but also in terms of overturning certain restrictions on the Jews living in Ottoman Palestine that he succeeded. So he engaged with the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, with the King of Morocco. We know he even tried to intercede at one point with the Pope when there was a Jewish boy that had been forcibly converted, the Eduardo Mortera affair. And so he was all over the world. He was all over the world engaging, and so he was then celebrated, of course, in the Jewish community for his achievements and for the fact that he spent his life really dedicated to service. As I mentioned, he retires when he's 40 years old and spends the rest of his life involved in this type of work, and he lived till he was nearly 101 years old. He would die here in Ramsgate and in his home, and then they would obviously have a service here, and they would then be laid to rest in the mausoleum outside, which we'll talk about. But in terms of this college, so then obviously there were people living on site. There was the rabbis, the ministers, there were the people studying in the college, and that went on for many years until after the time that Sir Moses passed away. Now, eventually, it wasn't quite working. There was an attempt to amalgamate Lady Judith College with had been Heshaim, which was responsible for, shall we say, training of rabbis in the community at that point, to kind of merge the two together, which was apparently not an easy discussion, because essentially they needed to retire the people who had been doing this traditional learning and then say, okay, now it's going to be a rabbinic seminary. But it didn't really succeed in those efforts, so eventually that was closed. There was a possibility of returning it to what it had originally been. At some point, there was thought about amalgamating it with Jews College, and there were some funds that were used in that way. It's had a lot of movements, but in a sense, the charity still exists today in the Montefiore Endowment, which not only looks after this site, but also runs the Montefiore rabbinic training program, Montefiore Kollel, where they nowadays are training rabbis in England. The only place that's doing that to be kind of synagogue rabbis, smicha, or even to be dayanim as well. And so that's kind of found a new life to this charity that Sir Moses had set up so many years ago. That building also would eventually fall into disrepair and was demolished. And so as we kind of made our way here, obviously you saw kind of all the woods area. That's kind of where the college had been. You see, it's kind of also one of these Tudor-looking buildings that had been constructed in the middle of the 19th century, and it had the mikveh in it as well, in one of the ground floors of one of the houses there, it's kind of taken on different forms over the years. I heard at one point there was a group of Hasidim that were looking to kind of establish a new kollel in this area and to use the synagogue to kind of, fulfill the original intent of Sir Moses, which was to simply have a place for people to study, rabbinic texts, Talmud and so on. But I don't know that ever kind of came to fruition. But of course, this has become an important place for people to visit, to connect with the legacy of Sir Moses. And from time to time, there will be events that take place here, whether a concert, I think that takes place around his Nachalah each year, as well as other kind of events. And if people are ever interested to visit like we are, people can contact the Montefiore Endowment, and the kind people of Ramsgate will open the synagogue for us, so that people can come and enjoy being in this space.